Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of the CAU podcast. As always, I'm your host, Spencer, and with me is Christopher. Christopher, how's it going?
Pretty good. Last time we chatted, I was in Kelowna. Now I'm in Spruce Grove, Alberta.
Yeah, so for those of you wondering why the Wi-Fi and whatnot, Chris has been kind enough to take time out of his vacation to sit here and talk to us about the Toronto Ultra and their upcoming tournament, of which is one, their homestand, which is pretty cool, even though, unfortunately, RIP to homestands. It would have been nice to see them in person, but nevertheless, it is technically the Toronto homestand. And B, sort of their season, if you will, their top 8 hopes and dreams are in their hands, Chris. So yeah.
Pretty crazy. I'm genuinely delighted and surprised about how much general content Toronto has been putting on throughout the week leading up to homestands.
It's been really cool.
Yeah, they had the Boxcar Social, they've had Northern Rivals, so there's a lot of stuff going on. And if you want to check out some possibly upcoming talent, definitely check that stuff out.
Yeah, the challengers and all that whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, if the homestand was really happening, I'm sure it would be awesome to be a part of all that, but it isn't. So we're here to, chat about what Toronto needs to do to get in that top 8 winners bracket for the finals.
Yeah, because I was even going to say, to your point earlier, they did that Warzone Monday tournament thing where I think each player of the organization, so all 10 players, and I think the two coaches or the coach, the analyst, and the GM all sort of had their own Warzone 4-man squads. Methods was playing with Mitch Marner. And people like that. It was some really cool squad. It was a lot of fun, and they had their own custom lobby, and it was sort of who could win, take first prize. I think first prize got to donate some money to charity. It was a great event. So if you guys haven't checked that out, the VOD's still on YouTube. It really is worth checking out because I was in chat. It was a good time. Obviously, we know Beatdown and them casting it, so that was really cool too. So overall, a really successful event. So with that out of the way, you mentioned it earlier. In order for us to get top 8, this is sort of the biggest weekend of their career, right? As a Toronto Ultra player, it's now or nothing, right? If you want the top 8, you want to finish in that winner's bracket and start the champs off right, you're going to have to come up big. So Chris, the question of today is, how can Toronto get top 8?
That is one hell of a question, Spencer. And I think to really properly answer that, we have to look at who we're playing and what we were doing last time.
Yeah.
So I think that we have a very, very clear path to exit out of group stages. We're playing Optic Gaming first. And even though they're not the strongest team, they have picked up a couple of individuals who have made them look a lot stronger in this past tournament than they have in the past.
Yeah, for sure.
So we do have some tough games coming up, but there's CDL Surge and Huntsmen on the other side of our initial group stage. And even if we do drop into the losers bracket and the Huntsmen, let's say, go on to get out of the bracket, we can still get out of group stages if we're beating Optic Gaming or CDL Surge. I do think that's possible.
Oh, so totally. I think the issue was, if you had looked at the stuff previously, everyone was sort of saying in order for Toronto Ultra to get top 8, they're going to have to get top 4 in this tournament, which I thought was more than doable. Yes, Optic has looked a lot better since they picked up Draza and Hollow, I believe. I was watching them play the last tournament. They looked so much better with those two in the lineup. Those two are putting up some incredible numbers. But top 4 was more than reasonable. Now, the unfortunate circumstances of that event, if you guys were not following, was I was worried about Optic popping off that tournament. But what I was not considering was the possibility that Paris would somehow go from not winning a game or a map in 8 previous tournaments or matches, whatever their stat was, they hadn't won in so long, to all of a sudden go from not being able to win in 2 months to a second place finish at that tournament, beating I think the Florida Mutineers and the Subliners, who just won the previous event. What an incredible run by the Paris. So basically, because Paris, shout out to them, but also not shout out to them because they kind of screwed us a little bit. So because Paris was able to get second place when nobody thought they would, in order for us to get top 8 in the winners bracket, we were actually going to have to win the entire event. So while I do think
that's tough,
that what you said is true, can we beat Optic Gaming? I absolutely believe so. I think with the 10mm coming back into the fray, back into the lineup, you're going to see players like Kleenex and Classics have a little bit more fragging potential, and they were always some of our best fraggers on the team. So I expect them to have more ability to sort of carry a game, which I think is exactly what you want from a player like Kleenex. I think the meta is now around 3 SMGs that allows like Methods and Kleenex, or sorry, not Kleenex, Cammy to play that AR, like more than possible, right? I think this is totally possible for Toronto Ultra to get top 4. The problem is, once we get into top 4, the 3 other teams that we are going to have to go through are either Chicago Huntsmen, Florida Mutineers, Atlanta Faze, or Dallas Empire. We have all 4 of those teams potentially standing between us and winning the entire event. So, Chris, let's just, for hypothetical, just assume we get top 4. Let's assume we beat Optic Gaming. You know, we go up against Chicago Huntsmen, we probably lose, and then we go and we beat Optic Gaming again, right? Let's just, for fun, assume that. That would mean that we would then go up against the winner of Group B, which is either going to be Atlanta Faze, Florida Mutineers, or Dallas Empire. Now, how on God's green earth are we going to beat either one of those 3 teams?
Well, I think, it's very clear that we have to just get our biggest machete and cut down all the brush around us and beat these teams out. But there's one thing that we're going to need to do great and to beat these teams, and that is enable Methods.
Yeah.
You know what? We had an amazing turnout from Kleenex, Cammy, Bands Classic last tournament, and it showed how far we could go in a tournament without even needing Methods. Methods didn't play too well in that tournament, and I think that for us to be able to get anywhere near the top this time around, we are going to need to have Methods turn himself on and bounce back from the performance he had in the past tournament. Yeah,
I totally agree, because Methods essentially all year long has been one of our best players, right? Nobody would deny that. He's been consistent. Now, that wasn't a 1 AR meta when you didn't have to worry about other ARs. So I was a little bit concerned where as soon as more ARs came into the fold, you saw him put up less than stellar statistics. But it was one event. I completely agree. In order for us to really take this to the next level, Methods is going to have to bounce back and be the AR that we know he can be. On top of Kleenex and Classic, I think are going to have to frag. I think Kleenex is with the new 10mm. He is going to have to show. Like people have been talking about him sort of being this like a BZ, like one of the elite subs in the game. And while we've seen flashes of it, we haven't seen it consistently, right? He hasn't taken over series. He's taken over maps. We've seen him like carry a hard point, for instance, versus like New York a couple tournaments ago, right? Where he goes on a 12 spree and it's the only reason we win. He carries that for us. But we haven't seen him, or like Atlanta Faze S&D, where he goes like 12 kills and like 4 deaths, right? Like we've seen moments where Kleenex can single-handedly carry a map. But we need to see Kleenex single-handedly carry a series, I think. Not single-handedly, but across all 3 modes. His domination has been weak. This has been a really good domination team, but Kleenex's domination performances haven't been great. He's going to have to pick that up. And I agree. I think if Kleenex is on, if Classics is fragging, if Methods is on, and I think Cammy's doing what Cammy's been able to do on the AR, and Bance is Bance. You know, we know he's a great in-game leader. We know he's all these sort of things. Like I think this team has a chance.
Yes. And the one thing I am a little bit concerned about is that the underperformance that Methods had in the last tournament wasn't a blip in the radar, but more of a trend due to meta shift. My hope is that he just had enough turns, but if it's due to the fact that the meta has shifted and has another poor performance, we're going to have to come back on the show next week and take a look at what's been causing that.
Yeah, so I think we'll cross that bridge when we get there, because you're right. Like I don't want to knock on the guy too hard for one bad tournament out of how many. It is a little concerning that it was when there was a meta shift, and then all of a sudden he wasn't the only AR, and that's where we started to see some struggles. But it's still only one bad performance. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm expecting big things from Methods. I know on Twitter he's been talking a lot of hype about how stoked he is. I mean, this is like anime storylines 101, right? Like, this is Toronto Ultra, the team that has been knocked on the entire year, the team that's gone through more roster changes than I can name.
Yeah.
10-man roster, finally getting a starting 5 at the Toronto home series. With the ability to get top 8, the destiny is in their hands. And they have the opportunity to win it all. They just have to beat 3 of the best teams in the league in order to do it. but it's there.
But it's Spencer. Spencer, final question for you. If we're making it out of group stages, what's the first team you want to play outside of group stages?
So I actually think Faze has looked mortal, especially with the new AR meta, right? We beat them in the previous tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly, we can take them. I think Florida actually looked surprisingly shaky in that most recent tournament. Florida had a couple, they barely beat Optic Gaming. They then went on to lose. I forget which round they lost, but they lost like Paris, right? Like Florida looked shaky too. Obviously, Dallas Empire won the whole thing, and Dallas Empire, I know like there was that joke about like they stopped. I don't know if it was a joke, but they stopped playing Warzone, right? They're just focusing on like dominating this Call of Duty league. So I think Dallas Empire and Chicago Huntsmen are our two biggest threats. So if I can somehow avoid them as long as possible, obviously we can't avoid Chicago in the group stages, but that maybe would be like what I would hope. So I'd like to play. I'd like to rematch Atlanta. We've had a lot of close games against Atlanta. I think we can do it.
I like that. So that there, folks, is how we are going to be able to get to the point where we're able to win. That's the breakdown, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode of CA Ultra.
Yeah, man. It's if you're an Ultra fan, man, this is the weekend to watch, right? It all sort of comes down to this. That's all I gotta say. I'm like speechless because I'm pumped because I'm wearing the Ultra shirt, right? I got the support is here, and I cannot wait to watch this team give it their all in the Toronto home series. It's all the stars are aligning for what truly could be a spectacular event. So make sure you check it out because I'm, bet your ass I'm going to be there. So
exactly. And just before we go, I know we forgot to do this at the very start of the episode, and I haven't been back in Toronto to check it out, but we did recently get a massive drop from Toronto Ultra themselves.
Yeah.
A bunch of t-shirts and sweaters and mugs and pretty much everything that we need to dress ourselves for hibernation and COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
So big shout out to them. We're going to give them another shout out probably when I get my stuff. We're going to take some pics.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram. We got some stuff coming. That's one of the reasons why I didn't mention it too much is because we got some stuff coming. So check us on Instagram if you want to see more of that. But yeah.
And if you like this video, please leave it a like, leave it a comment if you disagree with us or you want to have a chat about the meta or anything like that. And with that, enjoy.
As always, thank you for watching.